Sunny Melendrez, Sunny Radio, sunnyradio.com.
Hello, I'm Sunny Melendrez, and welcome to the positive side of the radio spectrum. This is the all-new Sunny Melendrez Show, where we strive to bring you a perfect blend of inspiration and entertainment through storytelling, fascinating guests, celebrity interviews, and it's all delivered with a healthy dose of enthusiasm. So let me begin by telling you a story that will set the stage for my guest today. In the late 1970s, my radio home was KMPC Radio in Los Angeles, and many of the guests that I had on the program were often comedians who would drop by to have fun, much to the delight of my radio audience. Some were established and some were in the early stages of their career. Comedians like Steve Martin, Richard Lewis, Elaine Boozler, Robert Klein, and Gary Shandling, just to name a few. Well, on one show, I featured an improv group who called themselves Off the Wall. And their director, Dee Marcus, asked if I would join them at their next performance. Well, I didn't need to be asked twice. When I arrived at the Modest Theater on La Cienega Boulevard in Hollywood, the show had already started, and a lone member of the improv group was on stage whose antics resulted in hysterical laughter. I mean, side-splitting laughter. I was standing next to Ms. Marcus in the back of the theater, and I whispered, "This guy is amazing." And I'll never forget what she said to me. She said, "Oh yeah, he's the greatest thing since Chaplin." The greatest thing since Chaplin? I wondered. After the show, I was introduced to the comic, and I realized that this loud, brilliant, funny performer was actually very soft-spoken, with a childlike shyness about him. Once the audience had cleared the auditorium, he asked the group to gather around because he had an announcement to make. He said this was his last performance, and that he was leaving Off the Wall, the group that had helped to launch his career and for which he was eternally grateful. You see, it was that night, in 1978, that a young comedian shared the news with us about landing a starring role in the Happy Days spin-off, Mork and Mindy, a comedian named Robin Williams. And that's exactly how it happened.
The Sunny Melendrez Show continues in a moment with more radio encouragement. Don't leave now.
Sunny Radio, sunnyradio.com, San Antonio.
And my guest today is really something that you may not have heard. In fact, I had never heard of this incredible, wonderful job title called the Improv Sherpa. Lisa Hurst, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Lisa, what are you trying to pull here?
I'm trying to share the love of improv and help people engage in a deeper way in their life and through communication and having fun.
Love it. Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, and I talked about the background in improv with myself in Los Angeles. I want to start out by, and you have some fascinating things that you're doing that I want to share with everyone. It's just incredible in the world of improv. But as a child, how did you what were where'd you set your sights on?
So when I was little, I loved painting and drawing and all kinds of fine arts, except for performance.
Really?
Which is very ironic.
So you were shy.
Extraordinarily shy.
There you go.
Which, you can always use your failures or your those difficult times for your strengths.
Right.
And so that's what I feel like I get to do this second half of my life.
Yeah. So. It's interesting because so many people who you see that as performers, they were real, outgoing as a child, or they were extremely shy like you and me. So at what point did you get out of that shyness?
So I started as a full-time youth minister many years ago, and that had me in front of the church.
Sure.
Sometimes preaching, sometimes leading Bible studies, and got me out of my shell, and with a purpose of not just serving me, but serving God.
Sure.
And so I think that helped me kind of get over that threshold. And then I saw an improv show and fell in love with it and said, one day I'm going to do that. And I did.
And where was that?
That was at a youth ministry conference out in California.
And you saw these performers, and with improv, there's no telling what's going to happen.
Exactly.
There's certain rules, but one of the main rules of improv is that you never negate anything that someone else is saying. At least not.
Right. Well, we have tools or rules where that's the yes and so the way I like to convey that is you find agreement, and you build on that agreement. So you want to make your partner look good, and your teammates look good. So you're not going to throw them under the bus.
Sure.
And so when you do that, I know that I can perform with you, and go there and be really open to a lot of fun opportunities of just saying yes, and let's see where that goes, because we build worlds on stage.
Now, does improv always have to be connected to comedy?
No, it does not. And sometimes the most memorable scenes are those that are just real life scenes that everybody can identify with.
Yes. And you have now connected your improv ability and your background to something even much bigger. Tell me about that.
So a few years ago, I started my company called Improv To Grow. And what I do is I focus on a couple different areas where we do team building, staff development, also do one-on-one coaching to help people connect their message in a very authentic way that it resonates with their audience. And so between those two, we get to go in and really apply all those tools to different communities.
Now, give me an example. You say you work with companies for team building. Mm-hmm. If you're going to be doing what would a typical team building exercise using improvisation be like?
So it would be something where you could connect one-on-one or in pairs or triplets. It's a real simple little exercise that you can expand into the larger group, that then you could connect with whatever the needs of that particular department is. Mm-hmm. You could connect that into the bigger picture. So
the premise that you would set up would be a workplace premise, mm-hmm. as opposed to a bus driver trying to fly a plane type of thing like you do at a comedy club.
Right. It's on purpose for not necessarily for performance on stage, but for back at the office.
Right.
And so some of the games and exercises are kind of silly, but the way I frame them and debrief them, it really helps to resonate and so that they can take it back to the office and apply it.
Now, see, that's really fascinating what you just said. You said some of the games are kind of silly. Mm-hmm. And so a game, you start out playing games when you're a child, mm-hmm. and silliness, of course, is also part of your childhood. Mm-hmm. So in a way, you're bringing out the child in the performers, aren't you?
Exactly. And I think that's the thing we get to, in this crazy life when you grow up, you get to get on and play, and you tap back into that innocence and that time of anything's possible.
That freedom.
Yeah. Where more times than not, we don't get that permission.
I agree.
And so
I agree.
To have that time out of like, we get to go do this now.
I hosted a children's show for the Disney Channel for several years, and we would set up all these games between parents and children. And these were not actors. These were not precocious kids. These were just kids that they found on playgrounds and brought them to the set. And I would kind of set up the premise. And you'd have a big guy, it's like a football player, and he's a rhinoceros. And he gets down, and of course he's got a 3-year-old daughter, and he's doing this rhinoceros sound or elephant sound or whatever. And they've got no problem with that because I would give them permission to do that. And in a way, that's what you're doing mm-hmm. with your people. Now, we're going to have some fun. We're actually going to do some improv for you here. And I promise you this was not rehearsed
no.
in just a little bit. But I want to talk about what you told me about how you're using your improv skills to help these caregivers with dementia patients. Tell me about that.
So out of everyday life, you try to figure out how to improvise. And I had an opportunity in the midst of caregiving for my aunt a few years ago where she was so disoriented that I was like, well, I don't know what else to do, but I'm going to try to apply these tools and be present in the midst of her dementia and advocate on her behalf. And I had a nurse and I had a doctor that came on board with me with that, because she was a social worker and she was very disoriented in the hospital because that's where she trained. She trained hospice nurses. So you can imagine being in that state of mind,
Sure.
confusion. So I told them that. And at that time, she was still able to walk around. So the doctor gave her, file folder of blank papers. And so she went and did her rounds. And so for me, that was a breakthrough to say, oh my gosh, that doctor actually listened to me. And he was like, oh, okay. So he yes-anded in a way that was like very productive. And it put her at peace. And she was much more compliant to whatever needed to happen. She was just a lot happier and just not as agitated. And so I just kept doing more and more of that with her. And some staff along the way, but they're not always that receptive.
Well, of course, they don't come from that world necessarily.
Yeah, and I was in a role of a caregiver, but my professional life, and so, it was kind of some mixed roles there. But I thought there's something here, and so that's what I've been focusing on this last year or so, is trying to work with the staff, do some development, and get this training inside, work with the patients and the residents, and along with their family caregivers. So it's a circle of care and advocacy that is somewhat new as of the last few years. So it's just a new way of really being present.
Give me an example of what you would tell the staff and how they would, buy into this this new way of doing things.
Well, so what I would do mainly is get with them to help them connect with each other and to collaborate in a new way so that they can be present with themselves as a staff and communicate much more effectively, which is a huge piece of it. But then also that they are on one page as a team so that they can really be present for whether it's the residents or their patients. And then with working with the patients, then they have some kind of ability to communicate in that same type of language and way, so that whole relationship between the professional caregiver and the patient would be much more smooth.
Right. So you say the language that you would use. Are you still having fun? Is there a childlike ability to connect with these patients?
Oh, definitely, because you get to break down that wall of going, I'm going to sit here for 5 hours and learn information.
Right.
It's what I offer is a lot of dynamic opportunities to engage with different team members or come up with a plan, innovate maybe a new strategic strategy.
Strategic
or strategy. Or strategy.
Stratosphere. Sounds like.
Yeah, it sounds like. Gonna have a vowel. To be able to be in that space of what's going to be best for this patient and this resident, and that's their number one agenda.
Can you give me a success story?
Yes. So primarily with my aunt, I was there one time where she was just super agitated and she needed to take a shower and also be fed. And there was a nurse who was so in tune with how to respond to her in a positive way. So she's like, well, I don't want to take a bath. And she goes, well, that's okay. But you still have to eat something, for dinner.
Sure.
It's like, but you have to put some new clean clothes on. Well, I don't want to do either one of those.
Which is a typical exchange that you would have.
Very,
yes.
very, very. And so this nurse just kept embellishing, like, oh, I've got the best looking pantsuit. It's going to be perfect for you. And she just kept, talking it up. And she goes, oh, and I made that fried chicken that you like. So, she just kept embellishing what that was.
Right.
And finally, and I'm still sitting there just in the corner, not saying anything, and just watched my aunts just go, oh, well, I am hungry. Okay, well, I guess I'll do this.
That does sound good.
And so it was this listening to my aunt's negative responses, but still having some kind of positive, because so many times there's just shuffling around to different facilities, so it was hard to keep the same connection with the staff.
Sure.
And especially the progression of the disease too. It was just even harder to be in that space. But a lot of times she had Lewy body, which has a lot of hallucination as one of the indicators. And so she was going back and trying to resolve situations in the past. And usually I would try to correct her. And then I was like, I'm not going to correct her. I'm just going to roll with it and see where it goes. And sometimes we would tell these amazing stories, or I'd find out information. Honestly, I don't know if it's true or not, but to her, it was at that moment, it was very true.
Yes.
So it helped me be very present, and sometimes that would last a minute, sometimes it would last 10 minutes. As you know, when people are in the throes of dementia, you don't know what that window of connection is going to be.
Right.
And so these are amazing tools to create that space and to create that opportunity to reconnect. It might not be the best, what you want for myself as the caregiver.
Sure.
But it's what your loved one needs.
Exactly.
And so it's to be in that space of, okay, this is not what it used to be, but this is my new reality, and it's surreal and it's challenging, but how can we be present in that 30 seconds even?
Now, see, that's the most important thing that you've said, is about being present. And when you hear something from your loved one, in this case, my mom had the same symptoms, you hear them say the same thing over and over. But if you are listening as if you are hearing it for the first time and reacting the same way, don't you agree that it helps them, because now you're not irritable, you're saying, oh, yes, and you enjoy. In fact, it would be funny because my mom would tell us funny stories that happened with my brother and me. We were growing up, and sometimes in the same conversation 2 or 3 times. But we learned to not only accept them, but laugh at them again and enjoy them and enjoy her in the process.
Exactly. There's a lady, her name is Naomi Feil, who's done a ton of training on what's called validation therapy, and it's taking what they're doing and what they're saying and being there with them, as opposed to saying, "Oh yeah, I'll go catch that," or "I'll do that," and it's the reduce agitation and that frustration.
Yeah.
Why do you want to create that in them?
Right.
I mean, it's like, let's just.
What's the point?
A lot of times, and they're trying to reconcile something that they wish they could have dealt with when they were functioning.
Right.
And so to be present of that, of being going, maybe they're working out an old relationship, or they're missing somebody, or they lost something that was valuable, but they don't know how to say it, but they have a story that conveys that same feeling or that same situation, but they don't have the presence of mind to.
I understand. I understand completely. Well, that's wonderful. You've given us some wonderful inspiration to deal with someone like that, and to also enjoy them, and to, like you say, listen to them and connect with them and be present. All right, we're going to change gears now because you had some ideas of what we can do as far as improvisation and have a little fun on the radio.
Right. So the great thing about improv is that we get to create a world and design it and live in it for a little bit.
Sure.
So when you go see improv, sometimes it's a 3-minute to 30-minute thing.
Right.
So today I thought what we could do is we could just create a story.
Okay.
And in the midst of it, anything's possible.
Right.
So I like to say we have all the resources.
Yes.
So we have all the money, the time off, whatever we need.
We do.
And in that I'm going to help you shine, and you're going to help me shine.
All right. Let's do it.
And so we're going to tell a story one word at a time.
One word at a time.
I know.
Not a sentence or a phrase.
No.
One word at a time.
And if you're really good
Yes.
at it, we might change it up and make it a little challenging.
All right.
So, name a place.
Okay, Paris.
Paris. Okay. So it's Paris. We.
O-U-I or W-E?
Oh. Yes.
Because we are in Paris. Yeah,
Yes, we are.
right.
We
Are
in
this
amazing
place.
because
Well,
the
tower
is
open.
finally
Exactly.
I
Saw
the
guy
go
up
the
tower
to
trying
to
get
the
brass,
shoes
but
he
didn't
make.
it.
So
I guess. Oh,
actually, let's do 2 words at a time.
Okay,
now.
okay.
So you do I guess.
I'm going to go home and talk like this. I guess
We can
get some
more cafe
in the,
Moulin Rouge.
especially since
They are
accepting American
citizens as
crazy people. Well, all right. So when you do something like that, you're basically kind of playing around. And again, the more, don't you think that the more you do it, especially with a partner, you get more polished?
What has happened to me is what I've experienced is that the more you do it, it's like a muscle, and so there's tendencies that you go to and that you don't even think twice about. So
Right.
So it frees you up of going, I'm not doing an accent in this scene, okay, so I don't have to worry about that. But certain things where you are freed up so that you're really present and you're really listening to what's going on, so
Right.
you can react
Right.
in an appropriate way, so that it's not like, you said the moon, but I said Mars. Well, now is it Mars or moon? Instead of being that back
Exactly.
and forth, it's being that present. So you kind of have a sixth sense or whatever about having that. Oh yeah, okay. The more you do it, the more comfortable you get, and depending on who you perform with, yeah, you get to know what
Sure.
makes them, tick a little bit and how to. I used to perform with a guy who's bioethics, and you'd say anything that his character was unethical, he would just like, whoa. But because it's hard to separate yourself
Right.
from creating those characters. But that was one way we kind of had fun after
Sure.
a while. But it's being I keep going back to being present. But it's the more you do it, the easier it's to get back into that flow,
Yeah.
to that flow of being present.
Sure.
So there's that vulnerability, and that's what I love about it, is that in the midst of that, there's that innovation and there's that opportunity to fail at the same time, and it's just like it's a sweet spot, because you're like, I know, I trust you enough to know that you're not going to let me go too
Right.
far off the path, but yeah, we're still going to be on that threshold of like,
Or
what?
burst my bubble.
Right, or
Yeah.
like, yes, yeah, exactly. And so there's that freedom of like, ooh, where's it going to go? Where's it going to go? And so it's this really delicate dance of a tandem with your partner, but also one of the things we haven't talked about within the performance is the connection with your partners on the stage, but then the connection with the audience. And so like you could be having a great time,
Right.
but it's not even checking with the audience. And so that was always my thing, was like going, what's resonating with the audience?
Right.
And so, is the audience sitting back?
Sure,
Or are they on
sure.
the edge of their seat?
Or if they're laughing hysterically at something that maybe you didn't even think was going to be funny,
Exactly.
you just roll with that and keep
Exactly.
going and keep milking it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, listen, our time is up. Lisa, this has just been so fascinating. Lisa Hurst, how do we get a hold of you?
So I am at improvtogrow.com, and all the handles at Improv To Grow, whether it's Instagram, whether I've got a Facebook page, and so really my website's the best, so improvtogrow.com. And I've got a lot of stuff coming up, so if you check my calendar on there, you can see what's happening.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much, and it's been not only an honor, but also a great pleasure and a lot of fun kind of playing with you here.
Awesome. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you for reminding us to be present.
Yes.
Well, that's my visit with Lisa Hurst, the Improv Sherpa. You can find out more about Lisa by visiting sunnyradio.com/show, where you can also listen to past shows on demand. And don't forget to subscribe to my podcast so you don't miss a single episode. Till next time, I'm Sonny Melendrez, and I'll leave you with these words from the great Robin Williams.
Please, don't worry so much. Because in the end, none of us have very long on this earth. Life is fleeting. And if you're ever distressed, cast your eyes to the summer sky, when the stars are strung across the velvety night, and when a shooting star streaks through the blackness, turning night into day. Make a wish. Think of me. And make your life spectacular.